Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, welcome to the to my talk about reconciling packages in HTML export. I'm Kyano Levi. I work on quantum information theory, basically a theory for quantum computers, and I'm more known under my alias MacZen on Discord and GitHub, and I'm known for some of the packages that some people might use here, like Lilac and Zero and Tidy. Yes, but today I want to talk about what can we do as package authors to support HTML, and maybe I can get a few hands up, like who's been authoring a package, who published a package on it, on the universe. Yes, right. And how many people use the HTML export, the experimental? Wow, oh, that's quite a lot. And at the same time, both packages and HTML export? Yeah, I guess so. It's just two hands. Okay. So the HTML export is still experimental, so it's not fully out yet. There's still a lot to do, but it's just around the corner, I'd say. But the support from packages lags far behind in general. And I think this is the time we need to, where we need to define maybe some standards, some guidelines to follow, because currently it's, really a mess. And I think if we don't do that now, we'll find ourselves in a situation soon where you could either use HTML export or packages, but not at the same time, because it just won't work. And then you need to basically throw out all your beautiful, nice imports and do everything yourself. And that would be pretty sad, of course. And just to demonstrate two very sad examples of the current state of the art. So some packages produce no HTML export at all. And others try really hard, but look at the inline CSS. I don't know how many of you are familiar with web programming, but that's not how you do it and not how you want it. So I think, let's remind ourselves why we even have this problem at all. And I think, yes, in general, the issue is that HTML export is much different than the visual exports. It doesn't look always the same, like SVG, PNG, PDF. The visual output is generally always the same, but with HTML we export to a different framework, which has its own rules, its own styling system and everything. And yes, web pages are dynamic, responsive. They depend on device type and width and height and so on. So I went through many packages on the universe and checked out what their individual problems were when exporting to HTML, and I figured out mostly 3 or 4 major problems, and I want to address those, and maybe we can find a few solutions, or at least spark the discussion to find a few solutions now or soon. And the first one is pretty obvious. It's that many elements like grid or line, they're simply ignored by the compiler, and this is expected. HTML export is still experimental. This will get better with time, I think. Yes, but so this, I think that's mostly up to the team to work on. And there will be solutions for that, but especially for grid and stuff, it's pretty sad. Or alignment, some packages would in principle work, but it's just that the alignment is kicked out and everything in it, and right. So, but I want to talk about different problems, because this is where package authors can actually do something about. One is graphical elements. So what about things that are just not possible to represent in HTML, because it's not made for that, like diagrams, graphics and stuff like that. And there's a huge number of packages that suffer from this problem, and the easy solution is to wrap it in HTML.frame, which is something that the compiler exposes to generate an SVG image of something, generate it in Typst, and then just inject it into the HTML. But the question is, who should do this? Who should wrap the content in the HTML frame? I can think of 3 people. Could be the package developer that just emits the content already wrapped up in an HTML frame. It's not too bad, but it's like a final decision. It can't be, this frame cannot be removed. And if there were maybe a solution to style it differently and then with HTML export it works, then yeah, you're bad off. Then maybe a potential template developer targeted for HTML templates. I think this is a clear no, because you just can't guess which packages will be used in a final project. And this leaves the document author, and they can always just wrap any content in this frame. But there's also a lot of boilerplate code. This will surprise users because at first nothing shows up, and then you need to find out why and what to do about it. And I think this is also not ideal. And so maybe we can go back to the first option, like what can a package developer do about this? And one idea that crossed my mind was that we are promised to have some like these custom types available at some point where you can create new elements where you can write set and show rules for. And what if the diagram was just a type like that, and we could write a show rule that puts an HTML frame around that. But then what if we also had these revoke rules that were discussed in the community already a lot and by the team, and then power users could just revoke this rule and do something different about that. And I think this looks like a pretty ideal solution, like given that this will be available, these features. But yes, I think in this case, this could be a very good option. But note, just do this if you're really sure that this, like, you need the HTML frame, because I've seen one package that provides like nice info boxes, and they support HTML by just emitting HTML frame, and then the styling is indeed exactly the same as in Typst export in HTML also, but this is just a fixed image, and you can't select the text anymore. This is like, I don't think that's what we want. Right. Okay. Let's continue with the problem number 3, and which is about styling and semantics. So how do we get the colors, the text, so the fonts and everything, the margins as we want them? And I don't know how many of you are familiar with web development, but usually you separate the source, the structure of the document, the HTML code, from the styling called CSS. And one option, or like how not to do it, is like that, which I showed before, where you just inject local styles and a lot of them. And the problems are like following. It doesn't separate style from structure. It's very redundant. Every time you create a new example like that, everything is repeated. And so this leads to a lot of code load, and yeah, right. And also this can't be overridden with CSS files, which is the correct way to do it. You can't override these styles basically, because these have the inline CSS that has the highest priority. Right. So it's a good idea and a good intent, but I think it needs to be done differently. And what we really want is something like that, CSS work like that. You address a certain part of a document, for example, the level 1 heading, and then you apply styling changes to that. And currently the main problem is the addressing already is hard to do, because with CSS you can only address things that have a certain tag, like H1 for level 1 heading, a certain class name or an ID. And yes. With the built-in elements, this is no problem because they translate directly to HTML tags. Like headings are translated to H1, H2, H3, and so on. Tables are translated to tables, and so on. And then you get these nice HTML elements which carry similar semantics as the Typst elements, and you can also address them in CSS. But this is not the same for content produced by packages, because, just taking a few examples, this code results in a lot of diffs, and which is basically just a block in HTML, a lot of spans, and this carries no meaning. It's just a general element, it's just a general block, and this does not help with styling. So you can't really apply styling to an HTML document like that, to these things. So what we really do, we want to convey this additional meaning, because the packages use just the building blocks that are provided by Typst, but they generate content which means more than the sum of its parts, right? So let's take as an example a box for information, displaying just to highlight a certain piece of information in a document. What we basically do is just do this is a function that takes some content, displays a line that says info here, and then displays the content. And currently the HTML output for this would look like that. So it's just a block, a paragraph, and another paragraph. So this carries no meaning about what this really is, because this should be an info box. This is the info box title, and it's the body for that. And so the first thing that I would propose is make add so-called HTML classes to them, like this. And adding these classes makes them addressable via CSS. So they can now be styled with style rules. But this requires you to add these elements, HTML div with an explicit class and so on to that. And although this works, it seems like a lot of burden put on the package developer, because you really need to write a lot of boilerplate code, and all in all, it's not really beautiful. Also, you need to check the target, because when you do something like that and export to PDF, then nothing is shown. And so you really need to check, are we an HTML export, and only then add these classes and so on. So it's tricky. But maybe we can take a step back and think about what we're trying to solve, because it sounds like a problem that we are familiar with. And we also have this problem in Typst, where logical units, logical building bricks of packages can't be addressed for configuration, for styling. And this is what is promised to be solved with custom types, when you can use set and show rules for types. And what I believe is that this could be a very good solution also for the HTML export. So just define a type for each logical building block, like that. So we have, for example, we have the type info box, we have a info box body type and a title type. Now you can use set and show rules to individually tune how this is displayed in the end. And what I now propose is why shouldn't the compiler for each type emit class information with this type name into the corresponding outer HTML tag. Yes, I think this could be solve two problems at the same time. So authors of packages just need to be aware, make it stylable, make it configurable within types, and then it will also automatically work with HTML export. At least this is what I hope for. And of course, make sure to include your package name, because otherwise there may be clashes between different packages which are imported at the same time. Let's skip over that. Yes, HTML also supports custom tags. You can just define your own tags, but barely anyone uses this. So maybe this is also an option. All browsers support it, even Internet Explorer. But this is not very commonly done. Right. So maybe as a last point on the agenda of my talk, I want to talk about what we can do to simplify all of this, about tools and adoption. I think we need more experimenting, more discussion on what might be possible and what might be the best ways to not result in a very awkward situation once HTML export is fully supported. And so one idea is, I don't know if you've seen this section in the Typst universe. You can filter for in this quality section. Maybe there could be an HTML compatible badge. And for once, this would allow users to filter for packages where the author thought about HTML export. But also this will motivate authors, because they will want to show up, they will want the package to show up with these filters, right? We want this badge. However, this might be very hard to evaluate which package should get the badge. And so I discussed it a little with Anna also, but she suggested that maybe packages could declare which targets they support, maybe just in the typst.toml in the manifest, and explicitly state that yes, we also export to HTML, and this will automatically make the author think about, and I think at least try to make that happen. And so this could be maybe a good good way to pitch that, to work on this. And also I think maybe we could have like a tool which evaluates your some example code and gives you feedback on, maybe you don't want inline styles because that's considered a bad practice, and so on. Or it could say you might need to attach a class name here or whatever, or add an HTML frame and so on. So I think a tool could also help to improve the situation. So to conclude, I'd say we need some more discussion. We need to find and define best practices. Yes, don't use inline CSS, please, and only use the HTML frame where it belongs and not for just like as a band-aid solution. And we need something like classes or tags in order to have truly stylable HTML output. Yes, so that was my talk, and then I'm ready to take some questions, and feel free to also later to maybe just discuss this in the break, because it's a good opportunity. Yes, you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Great talk and very important. I come from archive. We are fighting through supporting HTML for accessibility. This is a huge topic and it will hit you in the same way because there are legal requirements to produce accessible documents. Screen readers work with HTML, so people will want HTML output. And if you look at what the LaTeX team is doing, working through the incredible backlog of LaTeX packages, so they ordered it by usage on archive and then goes through the top, but there's still this infinite thing. So I think what you brought up here is super important, and I think for a relatively young community like Typst, that would be a super great chance to, from the very beginning, support proper HTML, also thinking about accessibility from the very beginning, something that is really hard on the tech world. Yeah, so it wasn't a question, just a comment. Thanks a lot. Very important.
Thanks for having this perspective. Yeah, that sounds really important. Yes?
Also a note on accessibility and also a small question. I would not be for custom tags because they lose all of the accessibility features that a pgraph or a div or whatever already gets from the browser, so please don't. And also, so is the solution to better HTML support in Types, once again, custom type support?
Yeah, that's part of what I said. I think, yes. And yes, you're also right about the custom tags in HTML. They also have different purposes. So yeah, I was just adding this for completeness. Yeah.
I wanted to ask if, because you're familiar with the topic, if you know some packages where you know, okay, these are already ready, some favorites. Do you have any?
I have one, and I'm not sure about the name. I went through so many, but there was one. Maybe I'll ask me later in the break, but I will check it out. But there was one package that was pretty good. They used classes with descriptive names. Like there were also packages that use classes C1, C2, and yeah, there was one which did pretty good. Yeah.
Thank you.